Welcome to the world of the polar bear, full of stunning glaciers, vast frozen wastelands, and documentary film crews. But it's not all plain sailing for the polar bear, with threats around every corner, like global warming, hunting, and pollution. What, if anything, can be done to ensure their future? Or is it already too late? Polar bears will spend most of their lives upon the seasonal Arctic sea ice at the top end of the world, doing so in 19 identifiably different subpopulations. They are the top predators of their Arctic environment, their primary food source being the ringed seal. But they will also hunt bearded seals, walruses, beluga whales, and even the odd reindeer. Along, of course, with ecotourists. They're really not that fussy. Mankind has hunted the polar bear unabated for thousands of years, but it took until the first space station was launched in 1973 for us to realise that we had to do something to stop their drastically declining numbers. The polar bear nations Norway, Russia, Denmark, USA and Canada came to an agreement for the conservation of polar bears, in which they recognise the special responsibilities and interests of the Arctic region in relation to the protection of the fauna and flora of the Arctic. It is under this agreement that polar bears are still allowed to be taken for either scientific reasons or for use of by native peoples.
I'm very jealous of what you're wearing. What is this?
Polar bear.
Polar bear?
Yeah.
Polar bear?
No.
And did you hunt this polar bear yourself?
Yeah.
You should.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah.
Okay. And are you the hunter?
Yeah.
Yeah? Wow. No prizes for guessing what this is. I know that you wear the fur. What else are you going to do with the body parts of this animal?
Inuit bimam nan tugayare. After ida net is
Does it taste good? Tasty?
However, there are ways around this. People like this woman here will get around such laws by using native people to help them to track and kill the polar bears. The native people cannot be blamed for this. They get what they want in the form of money, and the hunters get what they want, a nice picture for their mantelpiece and a new carpet. Everyone's a winner. As are zoos, it will happily take any abandoned cubs and put them in a lovely cage. Of the 5 polar bear nations, it is only Norway and Russia which maintain a blanket ban on all forms of polar bear harvest. Currently, the largest threat to the health of the world's polar bear populations are pollutants such as mercury, OHC, PFCS, and PBDEs, which are all the lovely sounding components you find in industrial coolants and pesticides. Many of these chemicals are fat-soluble, being easily absorbed by the polar bear prey species. Therefore, by the time the polar bear has eaten a couple of them, the biomagnification effect of these toxins is believed to have serious side effects. These include sexual dysmorphism, reduced body size, decreased liver function, and damage to the nervous system. However, it is global warming that is perceived to be the biggest long-term threat to polar bears. They depend upon the Arctic sea ice to survive. It is where they hunt for their food and will spend the majority of their lives. The decline that has been seen in recent years is a problem. However, the speeding up of this decline is even more of a problem. Global warming is believed to be caused by the amounts of greenhouse gases that we are pumping into the atmosphere, trapping the sun's heat and causing the planet to warm up. Predictions for when the Arctic will be completely free of sea ice range from 20 years to 100 years, so nobody is truly certain. So if the polar bears survive all of the pollutants that we're throwing at them, the ones that are left won't actually have anywhere left to live. It's fair to say that any polar bears left in existence will also find themselves in a lovely cage, until we manage to reverse all of the damage that we've done to our planet, which is definitely going to happen. The melting of the sea ice is also bringing with it another threat, in the form of exploitation of the vast untapped resources locked away beneath the frozen oceans. With huge pressures on those countries with a stake in the Arctic to open up and exploit the huge wealth available to them, and will be a catastrophic cost to the environment. With the US Geological Survey estimating that 25% of the planet's remaining undiscovered deposits of gas and oil are within the Arctic region. This trillion-dollar industry is desperate to exploit the well of riches, irrespective of the damage it will do to one of the most fragile ecosystems on Earth, with such intervention most likely leading to its entire collapse. There are in total 22 official threats to polar bears and their habitats, as listed by the ICUN Red List. In terms of conserving the polar bear and the seemingly impossible hurdles that they face, are those doing what they can to help preserve the species. One such organisation doing this is the WWF, despite the fact that they advertise to try and get people to adopt a polar bear, which is plainly nonsense. They do contribute resources and money to actual scientific projects to help better understand the current polar bear populations, as well as helping people living with polar bears in their back gardens to minimise the intrusions that both have upon each other's lives. The organisation gives both equipment and money to the Norwegian Arctic Institute, world leaders in polar bear research. The equipment that they donate is primarily radio collars. This allows scientists to track the polar bears. With little known about the extent of individual ranges due to the sheer remoteness and inaccessible nature of their environments, such data will only be of long-term benefit. It is not until we understand them that we can truly begin to help. Although this technique can only be used for females, as in male polar bears, their necks are wider than their heads, so the collars just slip off. Another facet in the way that the WWF is actively engaged in polar bear conservation is through its work with indigenous peoples. In Russia, for instance, the WWF supports local polar bear patrols, known as umki, with money and training, and in return, the umki will relay details of polar bear sightings, such as sex, age and condition, to the WWF to add to the scientific data pool for the species. The umki people will monitor polar bear presence near villages, as well as providing safe escorts to school for children. Adjacent to the Russian coastal towns of Vankaram and Ripovsky is a dense population of walruses inhabiting the local beaches. They often stampede, leaving behind injured and dead animals in the resultant crush. It is the umki-funded patrols that transport these animals away from the towns. If the animals were left on the beach alone, they would attract in polar bears, where the chance of conflict with local people becomes extremely likely and dangerous for both. Minimising the intrusion that the local people and the polar bears have upon one another is key to ensuring conflicts between the two are kept to a bare minimum, and is one of the WWF's primary outlets into actively conserving the polar bear at the current time. One of the major difficulties that those working with polar bears face is not getting 1 or 2 countries to agree to legislation and protections for them, but attempting to get 5 countries with wildly different political clout is very difficult. But, being a flagship species, it is a global icon for the conservation struggle. If it were a somewhat less charismatic animal, like the blobfish, people would not be going to such great lengths to campaign for them. Another is the sheer scale of the area in which the polar bears inhabit. It's huge, as are the number of issues facing them, so pinpointing which issues to tackle, in which specific area, taking into consideration which country they must deal with, makes this a huge task with very little chance of success. Apart from campaigning for the use of cleaner fuels, campaigning for the decreasing carbon emissions, which hit an all-time high in the last few weeks, there is nothing really practical that conservation organisations like the WWF can actually do. And if the recent animal extinctions are anything to go by, even if there were 1 remaining polar bear left floating on a block of ice, people would still simply not care.
The reason we've got loads of chickens and loads of cows is because we eat them. If we ate polar bears, we wouldn't be short of them. Because you'd farm it, you'd take more care, but what's a polar bear doing? Sat on a block of ice floating about. It's no use to us, is it? It sounds harsh.
Once again, got his information from a Glacier Mint advert.
No, but it's no use to us. We know they're there, and it's all very sad when you see them on the news sort of struggling and all that.
Yeah.
But it's going to make them stronger.